In this tutorial, I just want to bring you through the basic organization process that I go through before I start connecting all of my blend shapes. It's important that you actually create some kind of layout that's going to make a reasonable amount of sense to you, so that you don't get lost as you try to set up these shapes, and more importantly, down the road, when you are trying to connect the blend shapes or trying to animate them, you have a good naming convention so that you know what everything is, and that, again, like I said, you just don't get lost, because there's going to be a lot of information going on in here, and with poor naming or just disorganization in general, it would slow you down. And the idea is to make this as speedy as possible once you get to the animation stage, so you don't have to worry about that. So what I have here, what's in front of us right now, is the original sculpt and rig system that I had created. I'm just here in the front view, but if I went to my perspective view, you'd see that we have, if I turn on everything, just see here, show NURBS curves, there we go, and joints. I have my basic setup as I had constructed it before, but you know, most of these things, especially the facial controls, aren't doing anything. Now, my major joint controls, like the head control, is, because we set this up in a previous video. So the whole point of doing the blend shapes now is to try to get these facial controls, give them something to do, so that when I move them around, the face moves around as well. Now, if I just pop back here to my front view, you're kind of seeing some of the other work that I've already done. So what I've already done before I started this video, because I thought it was kind of self-explanatory, but at the same time I just want to make sure that I do cover it, is importing all of the blend shapes so that we can use them here in Maya. So if I zoom out here all the way, you'll see that I have quite a few blend shapes. Now this corresponds to all of the left and right hand versions of the blend shapes that I sculpted in ZBrush, with a couple exceptions where, like the jaw open for instance, it doesn't have a left and right version, it's just a single blend shape. The way that I did this was I imported each one at a time, and when they came in, they were smaller than the version that I had here that I rigged up. And there's a consistent scale factor that I used, which I had previously determined. So just as an example, importing them in, I'm just going to go to the import options, because it's always important to make sure that they're coming in as a single object when you're importing them as an OBJ. And let's just say, I already have this in my scene, but let's just say that I brought in eyebrow lower left. Okay, that's going to, in the case of this scene here, that's going to pop in underneath my guy here, and he looks really tiny. So a couple things. First things first, I would need to center the pivot, so modify center pivot, and I have a little center pivot shortcut there in the custom shelf. And then also that scale factor, as I mentioned before. So that scale factor is just 12.316 in my case. Now this obviously would be different for you, whatever you decided your scale factor is. Usually I would import in a bunch of these all at once, and that way I could just select them all, center all their pivots at one time, and then scale them up all at one time. And what I did, in fact, was, I can just delete this guy now, I went through and I brought in all of the shapes associated with different parts of the face. So if you look at what I have composed here, on the bottom are all the shapes associated with the lower face, the mouth basically. And then up here is all the stuff associated with the nose or the mid-face, and up here is everything associated with the upper face or the brows and the eyes. So in my case, what I did was I brought in all the mouth shapes at one time. I imported each one, and then I centered all their pivots, and then I scaled them up, and I just aligned them. They're basically in line with my my head here. And then I just tried to organize this as best I could. And I went through and I decided on calling it upper lip up, and I chose all of the upper lip options first. So upper lip up left, and then upper lip up right. And then I had upper lip down left and upper lip down right. So I tried to create this nice consistent layout here, where first off on this side is the left, and then it's followed by its right-hand version. And then when I go to the next one, it goes from left to right. And then I just kept all of the different facets associated with just the upper lip next to each other. And then I moved on down to, well, we had the upper lip roll there. And then I moved on to all of the corresponding lower lip facets. And then I just kind of continued on this way. Eventually I got past that. I went to smile. And then I went to mouth narrow. And eventually I worked my way over to the scrunches and then to the jaw open. Now this is just for me because it creates a nice, easy way for me to know where everything is. And then also when I start to select all of these, I can kind of select them in a particular order and bring them in as blend shapes, and that's still going to match up quite nicely in the blend shape editor. And I continued on doing that for all of these different rows. I have my nostril flares, my nostril narrows, and you'll see that it's going from left to right consistently the same way, and then eyebrow raisers, lowers, and etc. Now there are a couple other shapes in here too that are worth mentioning. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's just called the asymmetrical detail, and this is what we pipe in over the top of everything else just to provide that little bit of asymmetrical detail that was in the sculpt. Not a big deal. But this one here is definitely worth mentioning because this is the not obvious one. This one here is called receiver. And what it is just another copy of the base shape. Right? So it's not even a blend shape, it's just a base shape. So what is this going to be used for? Well, we're going to see that more clearly in the next tutorial, but basically, just to give you a sort of a sneak peek, we're not going to plug in all of our blend shapes onto our head that's been rigged up here. We're going to plug them all into receiver. Then, the result of all those, which is receiver, is going to be then created as a single blend shape into this. So we're going to have like 64 blend shapes plugged into receiver, and then we're just going to have receiver as a single blend shape plugged into the default head. Why do we do it that way? Well, there are some reasons that, basically we can start thinking about. For instance, if I ever, for whatever reason, needed to delete the history on this guy, for whatever reason, and I had all my blend shapes plugged into them, then I'm going to lose that entire series of connections that are plugged in there. Whereas, if I have all those connections plugged into here, and I need to delete the history over here, well, then I'm only losing one connection, which is really easy to set back up again. Okay, so that's probably the single most important reason why we do this. There are probably some others that we could think of later on, some things to do with wrap deformers, potentially. And just setting it up this way tends to make it a little bit safer, and gives us some more options than trying to put all of that, all those connections onto this one sort of hero piece of geometry. All right, now the last thing that I want to mention in this video is just about naming. So when these came in, when these pieces of geometry came in, they retained the name convention that was here in the original file. So if I go and find that little guy again, and not the joints, but the geo, hopefully. There we go. Center pivot, and then scale. All right. So this piece of geometry here, just like all the rest, came in with a name convention similar to what it was already. Jason head 30, eyebrow lower, left 2 in this case because I already brought a version of this in, colon, poly surface 1. Really terrible name convention. Now, if you'll notice, I've gone through and I've given these guys nice names, right? And names that can retain a very specific naming convention. That I just use always uppercase letters at the beginning of each word, and underscores between the words, and then L and R for left versus right. When we are setting this up in the blend shape editor, we only have so many words that we can actually see in that editor, and if we get a really long name like this, one, it's hard to read because it's just we'll have a whole bunch of things saying JSON head 30. And 2, we're going to lose a lot of the important words on it because they're just going to get cut off. So doing it this way, where we create nice names, is just going to make things easier for us down the road, not just in the blend shape editor, but also seeing things over in the channel box and elsewhere. Plus, it's a lot more user-friendly. So I haven't gone in and shown how to do all that because it's pretty darn self-explanatory. If you've gotten this far with me so far, I presume that you know how to change the names on your geometry. It's just a matter of being consistent, being careful, being pedantic, crossing all your I's, dotting all your T's, or is it the other way around? Crossing all your T's, dotting all your I's. And just making sure that whatever you're doing it the same way, right? There's a consistency involved. So I'm going to stop this tutorial now, and in the next tutorial we're going to start into actually connecting up all these blend shapes, specifically using some of the cool new tools in Maya 2017. So I'll see you there.